Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, college football fans, college sports fans, all kinds of sports fans across the nation and around the world. This is Tim May with the Tim May Show, featuring Clay Hall. And to Clay Hall's left, I'd call him our flight engineer. I'd call him our. Actually, he could fly this plane. He could fly. He could do a lot of things on his own, ladies and gentlemen. Luke Fedlam, attorney at law, counselor to the stars. Welcome back to the Tim May Show, my man. I've missed you.
Hey, missed you guys too. Thanks for having me. And you guys can call me anything you want because what you just said is a lot better than other things I've been called. So I'll take it.
I'll bet, man. I'll bet. But the thing about you attorneys, man, y'all are able to absorb those arrows. I mean, you know what I mean? Because you're just looking out for your client or clientele. Let's put it that way and stuff. But Luke, I wanted you on in this show because we all know about the SCORE Act. And it looks like the SCORE Act is coming to a screeching halt, at least in the congressional halls of America. That in fact, right now, the federal government is not lined up to bail out the NCAA and major college or college programs, but definitely major college athletic programs just yet and stuff. And number one, I wanted to get your take on this because a lot of people thought this was going to come down earlier this week. And one more political entity heard from and brought it to the, like I said, a screeching halt. But are you surprised?
I'm not surprised at all. If anybody's followed any name, image, and likeness legislation that we've seen over the last 5 years, there have been probably 13 or 14 different bills that have been drafted and 0 votes. There have been 0 votes taken on any bills relating to NIL. So this is the second time the SCORE Act has been pulled and not even gone up for a vote. And the reason why, for the listeners, the viewers, the important thing to remember is when we were back in 2021 and late 2020 and states were passing NIL laws, it was easy, right? Because all it was a state saying, hey, Republicans and Democrats could get together to say, hey, we don't want to lose out on, a football player going to Georgia if we're in Mississippi or Alabama, right? So we're going to pass this that just says, yes, you can do name, image, and likeness. Yes. And that's all it was. The SCORE Act and others that we've seen, be drafted before that, the SCORE Act gets into some very partisan, politically divisive areas of law. And the way our Congress is kind of divided right now, it is not surprising at all that this is not going up for a vote right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising to me at all either because I said I've been holding my breath forever. Wake me up when it happens because so much gets involved in it and so many people want to be the heroes too. That's right. That's just saying what it is. That's not taking any partisan side of it. But then, like you said, was back in the old days when it was the 50 independent states. Well, Georgia did this. We're going to do this, and we're going to add this to it. We're going to be even better than Georgia or Tennessee or Alabama or Texas or California, which California had some good ideas, but including the revenue sharing aspect of things, which of course we now have and stuff. But the bottom line is, what people don't understand, number one, we've talked about this many times when you've been on my show, and I appreciate you coming on to talk about these things that a lot of people are yawning or bored about. But let me tell you, this is shaping the future of major college athletics in one form or fashion. But the main thing we've talked about is the NCAA is a collection of Ohio State, Purdue, Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia. I can name all the members if you want me to. I think I could hit almost every one of them.
All 300 and some of them?
Please don't.
Everybody thinks the NCAA is sitting over in Indianapolis and just throwing rules out there, when in fact it's a collection of these schools, which is voting for things and then realizing, hey, that didn't go so great for my side. Like the what does the CSC stand for?
College Sports Commission.
College Sports Commission, which was going to be the arbiter, really, for want of another term, right, of NIL deals and stuff. But a lot of the big-time powers don't want to play ball. I mean, even though they agreed or their conferences agreed to the terms, they don't want to play ball. And so now everybody expects Washington to come to the rescue, which can't really even pass its own, spending bills. They can't even figure out how much they want to spend more than they have. You know what I mean? And now they're going to come to our rescue. Who saw that ever happening? I've never seen it happening. But right now, from what you can tell, what was the big roadblock with this legislation? Was it the Black Coalition or
so the Congressional Black Caucus?
Congressional Black Caucus.
Yeah. So they certainly came out against the SCORE Act, but there were also Congressional Black Caucus that's made up mostly of Democratic lawmakers, but there were Republican lawmakers as well, which is why the Republican caucus. I mean, there's such a thin margin there that they would have to get all Republicans on board to move it forward, and they didn't have it. Right. And so that was one, in addition to the vocal statement made by the CBC against the SCORE Act, but I think it's important for people to understand that sometimes we just hear things and say, okay, the soundbite is that the SCORE Act is going to settle the wild, wild west nature that we have in college sports.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to understand what the SCORE Act actually does. One, it creates an antitrust exemption for the NCAA and for conferences, which means at this point, then they can do absolutely whatever they want. And if you talk to a lot of people say the NCAA's had that right to do that, and yet we're kind of in the place that we are. Maybe that's not necessarily the best thing. The other thing it deals with that's highly partisan is the idea of categorizing student athletes as employees or not. The SCORE Act says student athletes are not employees. And we know that both through various unionization efforts that are currently ongoing, as well as a federal lawsuit that's ongoing about that particular question, that's a partisan issue, because now you get into things like collective bargaining and unionization and labor rights and all those kind of things. So there are some highly, highly political issues that are a part of this. Now, the good side of it is that it does create uniformity around NIL, so that we don't have individual states' laws that have a different approach to name, image, and likeness, and that we have this would create a federal law that preempts that. But these are not easy hurdles to overcome.
Yeah. And only thing I like about it is there is discussion. There are attempts being made, but like you said, the partisan aspect of it is just crazy sometimes about what. It's almost like one of these bills where you throw in, and by the way, you're going to build a dam in my district, you know what I mean, for water and sewer. But the bottom line, go ahead, Clay. I mean, that's what drives you nuts.
Well, just the spending. I mean, I read. The explosive growth. $75 million worth of deals were consummated in March and April of this year. And so that's caused, even Michigan's Kyle Whittingham says major college football is going to be the rosters are going to be at 50 million before we know it.
Right.
And so, are you for curtailing or a salary cap for college athletics?
So I like the concept that we ultimately create some form of salary cap that has the ability to actually be enforced. That creates an opportunity. We still will have the kind of haves and have-nots. We've had that long before name, image, and likeness even existed, right? I think anyone that's watching this would say that a Northwestern football program is not the same as an Ohio State football program. Same conference, completely kind of different programs. And that's pre-NIL. But I think, the salary cap piece is a challenging one, because we somewhat have a salary cap now of $20.5 million that the House settlement created last year. And this is the first year through that. But we also know that there's a lot of, just you said some of the numbers, there's a lot more money going outside of the salary cap to student athletes. And there is good name, image, and likeness out there. There are real student athletes, Jeremiah Smith, name others, right, that have real name recognition, real value to their NIL that can help a company sell their products and services. And those student athletes absolutely should be able to earn that compensation. But to try to put the salary cap in, I think a lot of people are in favor of it, but how to, one, implement it, and then two, enforce it, that's the hardest part.
Yeah, the arbitration aspect of things, which is interesting now, because they're at loggerheads in a lot of this stuff. And like you were talking about, the 20.5 was the revenue sharing cap limit for, like, Ohio State shared revenue with 4 sports last year. I think they're staying at 4 this year. I think it's going to go up $1 million for to 21.5, I think. And football will get the lion's share of that, as in the liver and the heart. Everything the lion goes far on the fresh kill, right? But the bottom line is the NIL aspect of things was always going to be the fly in the ointment, from the standpoint of it had bastardized itself at a lot of places and to be a fundraiser among alums for one of another. I mean, I'm making it as simple as possible to be able to pay players over and above what they would be making in the revenue sharing aspect of things. But even Ohio State, for example, they're not, I'm not going to name names. Backup third string left guard didn't make the same money as Jeremiah Smith in the revenue sharing thing. That's why it was really cool to see Matt Patricia and really Arthur Smith come in, because they've had experience of running an NFL salary cap world where this player gets this much and you get that much. And boy, if things go well for you, next year maybe you're going to get more. That's what people don't understand. So that's already in place, but it's a capped amount. The over and above is the NIL deals where a Jeremiah Smith is worth whatever he ends up being, $7-8 million or more. That's once you win that right, you can't take that away from somebody, can you?
Not without a lawsuit.
without the other word, which I keep bringing up. The other word I keep bringing up to people is the word contracts. In some form or fashion, if you sign a contract with me, I promise to pay you X, Y, and Z, help you with NIL X, Y, and Z, but this is what you're going to get. And you're not, like in the NFL, for the most part, you're not allowed to go out and get more because you're under contract to me, as opposed to, we have this agreement, you're going to play for us, and we're going to give you an X amount of money from our revenue sharing, but you can go out and find whatever you want, or people can help you find things because the schools can help them, obviously, with NIL deals now and stuff. So how do you get past that? How do you make them employees without making them employees?
Yeah, well, that's the thing,
or taking their rights away, which ain't going to last.
Won't last long.
You guys with the attorney by your name are making a lot of money on this deal. Pardon the expression.
So I'll say this. I think, this idea of the contract, the employee nature of student athletes, I don't think most people don't want to see student athletes as employees. There's something about just the genuineness of playing college sports for an institution and the love of the game and all that. But we also know that this is a big business.
Yes.
You talk about Clay, you talked about the explosive growth, right?
I got another. I want to hold that thought. Go ahead.
You talked about the explosive growth in the terms of the number of the dollars of contracts that student athletes are getting, now even outside of revenue share. But we could also talk about that same explosive growth in terms of what schools and conferences are making off of their TV deals and how that continues to skyrocket. And now you try to watch a football game or a basketball game, you're going through every app you can possibly find to find the game on TV. Yeah. And then you're paying for the app just so you can watch your favorite team.
And all of that, but you're sitting there with Google on your phone figuring out, wait a minute, didn't this guy play for Team Y last year? Now he's playing for Team Z. I mean, we're really in, like I'm saying, in my opinion, that old notion of what college sports was all about has long since, for the major sports, has long since busted out of the barn. I mean, they're out in the back pasture, man, eating the good hay. And that to me is what I think people are having to grapple with, what they remember when I was growing up going to Alabama games in the 60s with my dad and my older brother, Ben. Boy, Joe Namath was going to be there 4 years. 3 he was going to get to play, freshman ineligibility. We got to watch him play 3 years. That's no longer guaranteed for anybody on top of everything else that's going on. But go ahead, Clay. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, not at all. But I was watching a softball game the other day, Texas Tech, where they have money to burn.
Yeah. They got Ohio State's catcher from last year on their team.
Bingo. And it might be this player. Now, she was pinch hitting, and it was stated, and the reason she was graduating earlier in the day, she hustled over, gave her a bat, get in the game, because we're paying you $1 million.
Yeah.
And I thought that's got to be preposterous. No, I don't think real. I think it is real. And as it began to settle into my 68-year-old brain, good for her.
Great for her.
That it's not just football. It's not just the stars that you and I watch the most, but this softball player can change her family's life.
Well, absolutely right.
At Texas Tech, That's not across the board for softball, but
it's not across the board. But certainly there are those anomalies where there are some athletes that are having those unique opportunities to make significant dollars. And Texas Tech, when that first came out about the $1 million softball player, Texas Tech actually came to her defense because there were a lot of people online like, what? This is ridiculous. This is, all the things that are wrong, etc. But they then started showing all the analytics of the number of website visits, the number of applications, all the things that come just because they did that. There were stories and stories and stories about it and the value that you get with that. It's just like when you have a Cinderella story in March Madness, right? That all of a sudden people are Googling that particular school or whatnot. What's the mascot? Where even is it?
Why is Grand Canyon State in Phoenix? Should it be up by the Grand? Should it be in Flagstaff, right? But no, you're right. Hey, look, real quick before we continue on, because people have seen you on my show before, but tell people like kind of what you deal in this realm, because you were a forerunner. Seriously, you're at the vanguard of legal representation for people or helping people understand it. You've been part of Real Life Wednesdays at Ohio State forever. Urban loves you. Ryan Day loves you from the standpoint of bringing the real
Education.
world. Bringing the real world into the things, but give people kind of a little bit of a background of what got you into this and what you're all about right now.
Sure. I'll tell you first. And since you brought up Real Life Wednesday, that's the first time we met. I always say this too. We met. It was 2014. Urban had me come in, do Real Life Wednesdays. You happened to be covering it. You took a picture. I don't know why you do this. I don't know if they sold more papers or maybe people return their papers, but you put my picture on the cover of the sports section and talking about, the conversation we were having. I care about protecting athletes. I think that when we look at the NCAA conferences, universities, and at the pro level, we look at the leagues and the unions. They have the institutions, the organizations have tons of lawyers, right, to protect their interests. But it comes when we talk about the individual athlete, that softball player making $1 million. That family, and I don't know her family, but that very well may be the first time they ever saw something like that. A contract that actually deals with that, and what are the implications, and what are the liquidated damages in terms of if I leave, what happens? So I have really gotten into helping families understand, helping athletes be protected as they navigate the business of sports. Because as much as we talk about the love of the sport, we've got to make sure that athletes are getting the education so they can be protected as they navigate that space.
Yeah. And you feel for that because you were an athlete at Wake Forest.
That's right.
Track.
Yep.
And
you said it like track, like it's not football, but it's track.
No.
Well, hey,
my best friend.
You see where they're whacking some of those. I mean,
my best friend, at least in high school, was a cross country runner. So he would go, "Come on, Clay, you gotta," and we'd hop over the bricks at Scioto Country Club, and man, I would be like, he would run for 2 hours. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Crazy. Yeah.
So, what got you into that? What did you compete in, just as an aside here?
Yeah, sure. I was a mid-distance runner, so I was 800. I did cross country, and then for track, I did the 800.
You can die running the 800.
I felt like I did every time I ran
it. That's the answer.
I mean, I think it's the hardest run. But I will say this: I've always been around athletes. I think that it's important that we provide this education to help them navigate all of these changes. As we talk about these changes, institutions, Ross Bjork is dealing with a college sports landscape that didn't exist 10 years ago. Right. Coaches are dealing with it. I've gone to different schools and had conversations with coaches specifically about navigating this space around name, image, and likeness, et cetera. I mean, to be able to help advise in this space matters. And I'll share, and I think we've talked about it before. I represented Jameer Brown, who sued Ohio High School Athletic Association specifically around high school student athletes getting the right to earn NIL compensation, not to just be given NIL, but to earn it.
Yeah.
And that, again, goes back to this idea that there are some athletes, not all athletes, right? My son is a student athlete, and who's in high school. My daughter, she's an athlete that will certainly continue to, do what she does as an athlete as well. Who knows if they'll ever earn a penny in NIL, but they should have the right and the opportunity to be able to go out and do that. And that's what we want to fight for.
Especially, and what brought it to a head was especially how maybe conferences and universities, et cetera, would use their video highlights, Sure. And I mean, that's just a small example to help sell tickets or to help promote whatever. And why shouldn't you as an individual be able to do exactly the same thing? And that's what got us to the NIL crux, because it'd been going on for a while. But the other thing was way back before Georgia and Oklahoma sued the NCAA for the rights
That's right.
For their games to be on
rights
television every week if they so sought it back in the early 80s. You know, it was really, you know, a confined space there. But you know what? That kept that hometown feel to everything, like everybody's talking about those good old days.
Yeah.
Well, the good old days weren't as great as as they should have been.
Right.
I mean, Rex Kern and Jim Stillwagon and John Hicks and all those guys, you know, they could have made money just by endorsing a local deli or something. You know, that was sort of the idea behind the NIL.
Sure.
But as soon as the NIL was okayed, Texas A&M, which got, you know, Ross Bjork was there, he had to drive that eight mule train when the NIL was opened, right? And but the bottom line is, you knew big time alums were going to get involved in some form or fashion. Influential people, friends of the program, whatever euphemism you use for those guys, and reining that back in has really been the real challenge. But I always say this, Luke, and I don't know why I'm whispering. If Key Bank, which I think Jeremiah is doing commercials for Key Bank, for example, if they think Jeremiah can bring people through the door to open new accounts, what are you to tell them? Number one, you can't, and number two, to tell them how much they can pay him to do that.
Right.
See, that's the
challenge.
That's the challenge.
In the A&M case, the coach is making 75, you know, and so at some point you're like,
he's got ranches too.
Yeah, I mean, really, the coach deserves $75 million,
right?
And yet the labor force,
no, and that is part of the challenge. And you talked about contracts, right? You know, it's interesting because we still see schools and institutions doing some of these same things that people are talking about athletes for what in a negative way in terms of what they're doing. But we have schools that are, you know, even Duke just talked recently, you know, they for some of their basketball games that are supposed to be home games televised on ESPN, that they're, you know, looking to sell their own games for neutral site locations themselves and pocket all the money. Like there's so much money in sport right now, especially at the college level. The idea that a student athlete should be prohibited from being able to go out and earn that, I think, is now a memory, hopefully, of the past. Hopefully that's nostalgia and we've moved on. But with that, and what makes it so challenging and why, you know, we don't have a solution that somebody, Congress or whomever, can snap their fingers and make this as it is because there are so many hurdles and so many different issues that weren't dealt with over the years by the NCAA that now have all come to a head at the same time.
Yep.
So whether we're talking about eligibility, transfer rights, a name, image, and likeness, and student athletes getting paid, revenue share, all of these student athletes as employees or not, all of these things are simultaneously coming to a head that are being dealt with primarily in courtrooms. But certainly, I think people are looking to Congress to say, hey, you've got to come up with something that can put some guardrails in place.
Yeah, the entities have come out of the woodwork. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah, you throw a little bit of money out there. People come running. People come hither. Let me ask, you know, because you deal with this in one form or fashion almost every day of your life now, except when you're watching replays of the Tim May Show featuring Clay Hall,
which is a very good show, by the way.
Yeah. But so I've never asked you this. So what would be your solution?
Oh, come on, man. I charge a lot for that.
I know.
No,
but I mean,
yeah.
But the good thing is you're only charging about a half hour with us. Thank God. No, what would be one thing you would fix right now? I remember I asked Ryan Day that one time back in the spring, and he goes, basically what he would fix is if you got rules, adhere to the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't adhere to the rules, you don't get to play in the same sandbox. I mean, that's kind of what he said, paraphrasing. Yeah. But nobody's, like you said, they've tried to enforce rules, but people just thumb their nose at them.
Yeah.
There's no enforcement.
There's no enforcement, and that's again because we have lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit.
Correct.
That it's just this revolving door. If I changed one thing, I think if you change the transfer portal. If you change the transfer portal, I think you affect a lot. If we were to go back,
well, they did.
Well, they did, and then the attorney generals of multiple states then came in, filed a lawsuit, right? That now players can transfer every year. But if you were to get to a place where you say, you know what, you can transfer one time without having to sit out, like we had it back initially in 2020. And then here's the series of if your coach leaves, if certain things happen, then there's also kind of an asterisk, if you will. That changes a lot because a lot of what we're seeing in terms of when you say, hey, we have to look up to see who's on the roster for my team this year versus next year. Most student athletes aren't saying, oh, man, I know I can go get this money somewhere else, so I'm going to go transfer and enter the portal. Usually it's some quote unquote adult in the room that's coming whispering in their ear, their family's ear, like, hey, I got this school on the hook for this much more money. So let's get, and if that, because again, let's keep in mind at the college level, there are no registration or oversight requirements for agents.
Nope.
Right. So in the NFL, in the NBA, and Major League Baseball, you've got agent certification and registration. You have tests you have to take or whatnot. At the college level, you could just be Joe Schmo, right, on the street corner that just happens to have a relationship with your alma mater. So you go talk to a player, all of a sudden you think you're the agent, and now you're getting a player in a deal that's awful, makes no sense for them, and they're not making any progress towards their degree.
Yeah. And, like what Urban Meyer used to call them third uncles.
Right.
They come out of nowhere. And that's the interesting thing. I think Ohio State has actually said no several times to people who come in, an interesting athlete, possibly available in the portal, where their asking price was, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? And said, good luck with that, and gone elsewhere. But you always are fighting that because you always want to get the best player you can get.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So that's the rub. That's the rub to it all. It was always this competition. Woody Hayes and Bear Bryant hit the road, man. They went recruiting, where a lot of coaches back in their day had to be pulled grudgingly into that, That's why the rule book went from like that thick to that thick, just like on a heartbeat. But to me, that's the interesting part, because on the one hand, we want to kind of go back to the good old days in terms of these guys playing for good old Ohio State, no matter if they're from Guam or from Gahanna, right? Mm-hmm. And but on the other hand, we want to police. A lot of people want to police how much they can make now that the Pandora's box is open in terms of enriching themselves and their families. I don't know where you can actually legally draw a line unless you have them under contract. I mean, I keep going back to that. You understand what I mean by under contract?
Yeah, sure.
I know you know.
Yeah, but I mean, part of it, I'll say too, oftentimes when these third parties, these third uncles, these other people are coming in as agents and trying to help athletes, transfer schools and things, that's where we could step in right away, right? And say, you know what? If you are an agent that's representing a student athlete and you are negotiating a deal with an institution for that student athlete, you get 0% commission.
Yeah.
0%.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, most of these schools, to your point earlier, a lot of college universities are bringing in former NFL execs, coaches, and others, front office people, because now college athletic departments have somebody handling roster management, somebody doing salary cap and all that. So an agent is not getting an athlete something that school wasn't already planning to give them. So Correct. If you said, hey, agents, it is federal law that you get 0% on this, then it's a bit of a different story, because now what's the incentive for me to try to get kid to go from this school to that school?
That's it.
Correct. If the kid wanted to give him a part, I mean, that would be okay, right? I mean, yeah.
If they wanted to, yeah. But to say, hey, it's 0%. Now, you know what the part is? The part is, hey, if you can give me some other NIL outside of this deal that I'm doing with the school, great. Take your 10, 15, 20%.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I saw this thing on social last week, and it was, I think, an AI projection of the Ohio State roster. And Jeremiah Smith was making $5 million. Julian Sand was making $2.7, and Bo Jackson was making about $500,000. You know what these? Is that accurate? I thought I'd try.
Well, what do they make? Are they making it in total compensation or just revenue sharing?
Well,
I would think that's. But I would think Jeremiah Smith's number is low. I'll be honest with you. I would think it'd be low.
Yeah.
Based on, as he talked to us in the spring about what someone else was willing to offer out there. Isn't that crazy, by the way?
It is wild. And I have seen, I'll let you guys talk about individual athletes. Generally speaking, as I've worked with athletes across all the Power Four conferences and seen all the Power Four revenue share agreements and different schools agreements on this, it is certainly a new era in college sports in terms of it is unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it is wild.
But it is crazy. Like Indiana's going to have its third straight transfer quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
this year. We all saw what happened with Brendan Sorsby, the kid from Cincinnati.
Sure. Yeah,
That went
then
to Texas Tech, and now he's in hot water because of, and then it appears allegedly an unbelievable gambling history.
Sure, sure.
So,
which is interesting because don't forget there are schools and institutions that want to have that money from gambling companies, right, as sponsors.
Yes.
But then there's also this very much, hey, don't gamble on games, kids.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of challenge there.
Well, I mean, ESPN still has like a site, right?
Yes.
I mean, yeah. I mean, that's everything about it's polluted, except you want your athletes to still be pure as the driven snow to a certain extent.
Right.
That's a good way of putting it. So that's what I'm saying. I don't know how you get through this mire without another 4 or 5 or 6 years. And like you just said, even federal legislation is going to invite lawsuits, which will be
Sure.
You can't, right now they have passed. The NCAA has passed the rule 5 for 5, right? 5 years for.
No,
I don't think.
No, they have not.
Okay,
it's been talked. It's been discussed at the D1 Council.
I thought they had gotten
there. Hasn't
Yeah.
become a reality.
You get 5 years to play 5, and you can play all 5 years. Right. I mean, who's the kid on Ohio State this year? The transfer from, is it Earl Little Jr.? I can't remember who it is.
Florida State.
Yeah, no, the running back, Jacoby Jackson, I think is going into
Florida.
From Florida. I think going into his 6th or 7th year in college. Well, John Belushi said it best, 7 years of college down in a toilet in Animal House. But no, I don't have a problem with that. I'm just wondering what he's taking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You run out of classes unless you're going to become a heart surgeon. But where do you stand on that? Where do you stand on a restricted time frame? Does that sound feasible?
I mean, 5 and 5 makes great sense, right? I mean, it's just it is this period of time where you can play college sports, and then you move on to whatever's
like
next.
A throwback
whatever
rule.
That next is.
Yeah, back on the throwback rule, 5 to play 4.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that, I think that makes perfect sense. And I think it makes sense to a lot of people, because when you start to get into 7, 8, I think there was somebody that was 9 years, it starts to get a bit ridiculous. But at the same time, this is, I think, something that's important to say, which is if you have the ability to challenge in a court, if you're challenging it in court and court sees it the same way or judge sees it the same way, take every opportunity you can.
Of course.
I mean, so I would look at it the same thing. If there was an opportunity for me to, do whatever that thing might be, and earn compensation while doing it, right? You want to be able to have the opportunity.
Right. But as I keep saying, back when I was growing up, college was not meant to be a career choice. It was meant to be an improve yourself and move on choice, no matter if you play athletics or not.
But let's also not forget the students, non-athletes, but students that don't know what they want to do in life, and they just, hey, I'm going to keep, mom and dad, if you're going to continue to pay, I'm going to continue to go to school till I figure it out.
Yeah.
Don't you think, how many schools, and I think Ohio State's a little bit in the midst of this in terms of roster construction, bringing in 51 players. Now, half of those are high school kids, but that's a lot for them, 26, 25.
Sure.
And Mark Pantoni, I mean, that must drive him up a wall trying to figure out this guy gets this and this guy. And I've had a little bit of conversation with him about that. And it's like, he finally is able to take a breath because they're signed, they're in, there's no more portal for the year. But that signals a change in their philosophy.
Sure.
And
sure.
Tim has talked about this.
Yeah. I mean, certainly a change. And I think that's why we're also starting to see more and more of, like I said earlier, like we talked about, more professional sports executives, people with professional sports experience coming into the college space.
Coaches.
Coaches to be able to help the programs navigate it. Yeah, absolutely. It's the new thing. I mean, and again, you've got oftentimes coaches that want to focus on the X and O's, but you have to deal with so much more than just that, right? It's not even just recruiting. Now it's also the recruiting, and it's the money, and it's the fact that I've got to re-recruit my existing guys every single year, to keep some consistency. So certainly challenges. But here's the thing. With everything that we've talked about, with all the changes, college football is more exciting than it's ever been. There's more viewership than there's ever been. It's more exciting. I mean, we can talk about all these challenges, but even with that, guess what? This fall, people are gonna be tuning in, watching every game.
I had Pete Thamel on my, Pete Thamel from had him on my podcast a couple of years ago in preseason. That's what he said. I mean, basically said it's never been more chaotic and crazy off the field, and never a better product.
That's right.
On the field in terms of excitement, etc. I mean, it is crazy, but it's untenable. I mean, it's like unsustainable, maybe is the word I'm looking for here, because if you got to keep knocking on doors to raise funds in one form or fashion, NIL, it's going to take a lot to get NIL reined in. I mean,
sure, but I think
I'm talking about from what everybody think it should be or think it should have been, but they, shame on them for kicking that can down the road 30 years, 40 years. But I don't, like I just said earlier, there's no way you're going to take that away. I mean,
right. So then the question
becomes, like saying you can't breathe anymore. Right. It is.
But think about what you said, right? In the sense that if you think that it becomes untenable to keep knocking on doors and keep asking for money, right? Maybe that's the thing that reins it in, right? At a certain point, there's donor fatigue, right? At a certain point, we reach the max where it's like, okay, hey, if I just gave XYZ institution for the last 5 years a couple $1 million and you have not won, like I'm probably not going to keep doing that, right? I mean, I think there's this notion that donor fatigue is very much real. Coaches, feeling it. The administrators, ADs, et cetera, are feeling it. At a certain point, maybe that is the free market, right? Which we've only really had in this kind of college sports space for a very, very short period of time. Maybe it's that free market figuring itself out.
Yeah.
And then over the coming 5 to 10 years, it does come up with some just natural guardrails without it necessarily being kind of legal guardrails.
Dude, Clay, he and I talked about this very thing 6 years ago, that it's almost like a racehorse. You got to let him get out there and gallop and then find his level, find out where he's going to run out of gas. I mean, and it's still in the midst of the gallop, man, of the big Kentucky Derby start. They're kind of going into turn 1 right now, I think. There's some bumping and grinding going on.
But a little positioning.
But this is the cool thing about it. I don't know why I'm whispering. The cool thing about the change is what we've seen in Indiana the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That's the difference. What you're saying, I'm going to whisper too, because it just sounded cool when you said it. But like
if you don't know what happened, Google it. Go ahead.
But if you're a fan of college football and you think about your alma mater, like there are so many schools now that think that they have a chance.
If why not us?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Vanderbilt. That very same thing. I mean, Mississippi State signed a 5-star quarterback. Yeah, was he neighborly and local?
Sure.
Wanted to play there, but they had to step up.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a thing the other day and could not believe it, because that school doesn't have a ton of big money. Doesn't have that. But anyway, so there's 16? Yeah.
Yeah.
16.
In the SEC.
And we were 7th in outlet sports spending, primarily college football, but putting other schools like our rival, who has the doctors and the lawyers and all the money. Ole Miss was 11th. And it's like, somebody's been working.
Yeah.
We hired a Selman, from that Oklahoma school of Selmans, Zach Selman, who is our AD now, and they badmouthed him, and what's he going to do, and this and this and this, and that stunned people.
He went to work.
Because now we're in the damn game.
He's a Wake Forest grad, so of course he's doing the damn thing.
There you go. Good for him.
Yeah.
And African-American gentleman, and I just couldn't be happier that we're no longer 14th or 15th. And I don't follow it as much as, those who live there, but I did watch Mississippi State rule Missouri today, but they should have. Missouri 16.
Man, you didn't bring that cowbell with you, did you? Dang, he gets there and clangs that thing.
That's a school that does not belong in the upper echelon if you're tracking money. And they said, hold the phone, hold my beer.
Yeah.
We're going to do what we're
going to compete.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just stunning to me.
Hey, Luke, so, basically what he just brought up without bringing it up is, okay, I give I get involved in the NIL aspect of things. I'm talking about schools, et cetera. I get involved in the fundraising, and then if it doesn't happen, we don't get those results. Go knock on somebody else. That's going to be, like you said, that's what's going to turn the tide for a lot of these schools. Are going to go, this is a waste of effort and money, and nobody likes to see that. I think there's going to be a reckoning in that regard. I mean, the great thing about first Texas A&M, but Texas, Alabama, Georgia at the beginning, but like on Ohio State, once Ohio State, I once said this wrote this story one time during the John Cooper era. If everybody at Ohio State just started rowing the boat in the same direction, I'm talking about alumni and stuff, man, what a majestic boat it would be. And they finally did, didn't get the national championship in the mid-90s, but boy, was that big-time football, as you well know. I think you were like 8 then. But
thank you.
But you're welcome. Not quite busting your lungs yet for good old Wake Forest. But the point is, there will be. Is everybody going to be patient enough to wait for this to settle itself out?
No, they're not. To answer your question, and I think that's one of the challenges, because the pressure that comes with money is not just on student athletes, but also on coaches.
Oh yeah.
So now it's like, hey, Jimbo Fisher at Texas, A&M. Hey, if you're not producing and we're putting this money in, and we're going to our alumni and raising all this money, and you're not producing, we're going to cut you that $76 million check or whatever to leave, to walk out the door. But I think the pressure on coaches is certainly changing, because if you're an AD and you're out there busting your chops to raise the money necessary so that your athletic department can compete, and coaches aren't delivering on that investment, it becomes a different challenge. There's not the rebuilding that we may have heard in the past of like, oh, it's going to take some time. We're going to rebuild.
4 years.
Yeah, we got a great, incoming class, and we're going to develop over the next 2-3 years. Now it's like, hey, transfer portal, we've raised you the money, we've got you the players. If you don't win, there's a lot of pressure on you.
What about the idea of, you use the word investment?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Of outside money coming in, private equity, whatever.
Yeah.
I just see some entanglements there down the road. I mean, it would be, dude, nobody gives you $1 million and just says, hey, do what you want. I mean, whether we make a profit or not, I mean, that's that old line. The worst thing in the world is to see a company bought by another company. The company that buys them is going to get their nut back before they do anything else. There'll be slash and burn. There'll be all this kind of stuff. It's good money at the start, but then it bleeds away quickly and leaves you with deep wounds. Just the last couple of things what I want to ask you about. I mean, but there's entanglements there, I would think, even from an athlete standpoint, of who's running the show, who's calling the shots down the road that can impact them too. I mean, there could be too many cooks in the kitchen. I'm trying to think of other cliche analogies I could come up with there, but that's really a slippery slope, isn't it? I mean, what's your take?
Yeah, so I don't think it's a slippery slope from the athlete perspective, because what we've seen, we can use University of Utah as an example.
Okay.
University of Utah brought in $500 million through private equity, through Ocho Capital. And in doing that, the part of the deal is that everything that's outside of the product on the field, so ticketing, concessions, licensing rights of logos, etc., all of that falls under this, hey, this is what we now have control over. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more of that. But the line, at least that we see drawn now and that we could expect, is that they're not going to control the product on the field. They're not going to have control over hiring and firing of coaches and roster building, roster management. Could that change in the future? Potentially. I think once you do that, then many may argue we're already in a professionalized college sports space, but if you now have outside, money controlling the product on the field, then you certainly, without question, are in the professional space.
But it's clearly going to lead to that if you do that. If you let the wolf in the door, the wolf's going to. I mean, I'm not calling, it could be salvation for a lot of universities.
It absolutely could be.
Yeah.
And for some, it will be.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other thing. And again, a lot of times, a lot of people talk about athletic departments that don't really have money. Like, not many athletic departments make money. Well, part of that is some interesting accounting too, right? We know that facilities are always put into and all that. So whether you don't turn a profit doesn't mean that you didn't have money coming in.
Correct.
As you're doing things to improve your program. But there's certainly a lot of programs that don't have the ability to stay relevant and compete. They don't have the donor base. They don't have the funding. They don't have the ability to compete in the NIL space. And from that perspective, private equity could very well turn into an opportunity.
But your alma mater, Wake Forest, what, second smallest
Yeah, in the country.
School, major college in the country. Is Rice the smallest? I'm trying to remember.
I think it might be.
Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. How could they possibly, with the exception of like big time donors in the Winston-Salem area and people like that, how can they possibly compete? And what I'm leading to here is, I remember talking with the Bowling Green athletic director last year when they named Eddie George the head coach, and we were just talking off the cuff about how you could see those leagues eventually moving it into a coalition of their own.
Yes.
Meaning Sun Belt, MAC. How would that? Because those guys aren't getting big time NIL deals to go to Bowling Green or Ohio University. Maybe a few, but they don't even have really the funds for the revenue sharing minimum, right, or maximum.
Sure.
So how are we supposed to believe that that's all going to settle itself out? I mean, I don't think you do.
Well, I think it's,
I didn't mean to put those words in your mouth.
No, sure. But if we talk about settling it out, I mean, what does that mean? Because if settling it out means, hey, that we're going to get back to what college sports used to look like, it ain't happening.
It ain't happening.
So if settling out means, hey, we're going to look at, I mean, shoot, trust me, we know the Big Ten and the SEC are looking at settling out potentially a different way where they have their own thing, right? I mean, we could look at a place in 5 to 7 years where college sports looks completely different.
Yeah.
And we have a mega conference and we have, other, so different levels, right? I mean, I don't really follow soccer like that globally, but you've got the Premier League and you've got other leagues and you can work your way up and down and things like that. I mean, we could see something that looks like that in the future as well. But I think, just to go back to what we very first started with, and Clay mentioned about, a lot of people think of the NCAA as like this, this building in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
You said that. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tim.
Yeah.
I'll give you the credit on
Appreciate you, man.
but the thing is if we could have schools, conferences, and others that come together, say, you know what, we're just going to do our own thing, and we're going to come up with our own rules, and we're going to apply our rules. And if a student athlete wants to come here and be a part of it, they're going to agree to the rules that we've set forth, and that's what it is.
But did you see? It was Big 12, ACC just said, if the Big 10 and the SEC want to go do their own thing, go ahead. Wait a minute. Do you think you can survive without? I thought that was a little premature.
Well, wait a minute. Well, could be vice versa there too.
Well,
I mean, you still got to have somebody to play.
You still got to have somebody to play. I think the Big Ten and the SEC certainly
you got
have
34 schools
across sports. I mean, football obviously dominates all this, but across sports that they could compete. I think the ACC, the Big 12. The ACC, they've had their own challenges with their media deal, which obviously we saw that was kind of the demise of the Pac-12 in terms of the media deal. So that media money means a lot. And so in terms of who you're playing and what that amount is, who would have thought we would have gotten to this point, right? That it's speaking of Wake Forest plays Syracuse. They're going to play week 0, right? They're going to play in Toronto. So Wake Forest and Syracuse in Toronto, they haven't picked a day yet. We're talking about August. They haven't picked a day. Why? Because they're still figuring out what platform it's going to be on to air the game. So it's either going to be on that Saturday or Sunday of week 0.
Yeah, there may be a line there, too, getting into Canada. You know what I mean? If things are 51st state. I'm just joking. But no, I see exactly what you're saying. And the other thing is, though, like they're alluding to, maybe you don't want to keep up with the Joneses. There's that thought, because but the Big Ten and the SEC, for example, can't even agree on 16 or 24 for a playoff. Dude, loggerheads, I don't know what you call it. And everybody thinks ESPN's calling the shot for the SEC based on the fact it has the exclusive rights to the SEC and its affiliates and so that's the thing. Like we talked about earlier, we're talking about a bunch of independent states, pardon the pun, all trying to act like they're trying to get along for the common good, when in fact all Alabama wants to do is kick Tennessee's butt. All Georgia wants to do is kick Alabama's butt, and that's what's always made college sports great, in my opinion. And I don't know how moving to just 34 teams in the upper level of major college football fixes things, because I'm telling you what, I grew up in Alabama. My baby brother still cries who's 68, still cries when they lose. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You're in a big time. If it's just play within your little conference there or your affiliation with the Big Ten, there are going to be teams used to going 10-2. They're going to be going 7-5, and the alumni aren't going to like that.
Could they run it in the ground? I mean, could this thing be destroyed by greed?
I don't think so. We can always say too big to fail.
Yeah.
But I think college football, there are two there are too many stakeholders that are involved from a financial perspective that I just don't see it. It'll stay afloat.
Yeah.
And there'll be new and creative ways. I mean, I think what we're talking about, we could have this. This is why I love it. I got some career, kind of longevity and security, right? Because these things are changing so much. I know in a year from now, you can say, hey, Luke, come back on the show. Absolutely. And we'll talk about all new things.
2 months from now. Ladies and gentlemen, the incomparable Luke Fedlam has joined us, and I appreciate it. By the way, in a nutshell, do you mainly represent athletes and families, or do you just kind of run the gamut?
So it's interesting because it's name, image, and likeness is so new.
Yes.
So I have had the opportunity to work with institutions, with families, with the athletes themselves. I've worked with the U.S. Senate Commerce Committee, their lawyers. We've talked through some things. I've worked with the IRS, worked with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office around how they get it out to help athletes understand their brand and protecting it from a IP, intellectual property perspective. So, and then brands and companies that say, hey, I think I want to get into this space, but I don't understand it. And so I then get involved to help them effectively navigate. So business owners and entrepreneurs. So thankfully, because this is so new and I've been involved from the beginning kind of since 2019, I've got a 360 view of this space and can help advise people as they navigate.
Riley Pettijohn's mom, Juliette Pettijohn, Riley Pettijohn's a linebacker. She wrote a little pamphlet, really, but just to help parents of athletes being recruited in Division I, major college, just answer some real basic questions for them and stuff about how to deal with this thing and that thing. But I'm asking from your standpoint, would you always encourage people who have a high level kind of athletic son or daughter to get outside help from the standpoint or counsel from I'm not talking about having a third uncle as your representative, but unless he's a really good lawyer, but who works cheap. But would you encourage them all to examine that? I mean, is it worth their while to have some kind of, for want of another term, legal representation?
Absolutely, yes. And that's not even being self-serving. That is, again, I mentioned it earlier, the conferences, the institutions, the schools themselves, they have their lawyers. Yeah. They know what it is that they're protecting in these contracts. For athletes, oftentimes it's the first time they've ever seen it. So yes, you absolutely should get qualified independent counsel. And what I would say is oftentimes just being able to have that advice and that counsel while making a decision matters, because oftentimes as an independent lawyer, I tell families all the time, who are the people that are helping you make decisions? Oftentimes it's people that are impacted by the outcome of the decision they make. So it's that person that wants to be the agent. It is the third uncle that's going to be the manager of that player while they're in college or whatever and getting paid off of that. So make sure that you're getting someone that you are paying to be objective, to be critical, and to fight for your interests so that you can even understand what it is that you're signing and getting involved in.
Or like me, if you're in retirement, fiduciary.
Yeah.
Hey, last thing, the Jameer Brown, how solid was that decision and stuff? And where do you know what I mean? Is that still being challenged or
sure?
What's the
so there's been legislation that was introduced in February into the State House, the House Education Committee, House Bill 661, that is trying to repeal name, image, and likeness for high school student athletes, which honestly would be a significant step backwards for high school sports in Ohio. Only because I have spoken to families. There are some folks that are here in Ohio because name, image, and likeness became a reality. And so there are some that will leave if it becomes that student athletes can't earn compensation through name, image, and likeness. It hasn't been formally introduced, but there was another bill, House Bill 745, that looks like it will be formally introduced that will codify the right for student athletes in high school in the state of Ohio to be able to earn NIL compensation with some guardrails. And just to keep in mind, this is completely different. High school NIL, there are so many guardrails that are already in place by the OHSAA bylaws. Like and this is not schools paying the athletes like it is in college. It is just a kid that, happens to, I don't know, go over to a pizza shop and maybe gets free pizza because he posts on social media about that pizza shop and that all his friends go there after practice. Or it is that athlete that can sign a trading card deal at the high school level because they are that type of athlete. It's not that institutions or collectives or these, amorphous third parties are all of a sudden throwing money to that student athlete. So that's what name, image, and likeness at the high school level is about. And I think we need to make sure that we allow student athletes those rights to be able to do that.
You know what I see coming? I see somebody having, I'll use the pizza example, having a big deal with a pizza place, but it's not somebody that's advertising on the wall or in the gym or in the program at the high school, and they're, wait a minute, you can't do that because we're trying to get this money for our high school. I mean, dude, it's never going to stop. I mean, in terms of challenges, right?
Wait, are you saying that there's challenges when money's involved?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah, get out of here. Wow. By the way, has there been, since that Jameer Brown thing came down, and thank you for leading the charge, has there been a great influx, or not influx is not the right word. Has there been an explosion of NIL deals?
There hasn't.
Yeah, that's what everybody's all. Yeah.
I mean,
exactly.
It was through the first 3 months or so, there were maybe 30, 35 deals that had gone through for high school student athletes, and most of them were very small deals. I mean, that is, I have a friend that has a high school student athlete, a daughter that plays volleyball and basketball in Gahanna. And she was doing a couple deals because she had partnered with places that she trains. And if people would sign up for training under her code, then she would get a little percentage. I mean, these are like simple things for athletes to think about this, learn life skills, having professional conversations, understanding business, understanding how to, have a conversation with the manager of a business and talk about who you are and think about your brand. It matters, and it's going to develop.
We wanted it to be in the beginning.
Thank you, Clay.
Open an account at KeyBank. Tell them Jeremiah sent you.
That's right.
Hey, Luke Fedlam, thanks for coming back on the Tim May Show, my man.
Appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys. Tim, Clay, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm just cringing at getting that bill. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tim May. That's Clay Hall, and that's the incomparable Luke Fedlam. Known this guy for more than a decade. Man, we've known each other for a long time. And he's about as sharp as they come. I think you just realized that. But until Friday, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you then.